The world watched as the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs flooded airwaves with bombshell testimony and grim evidence. And now a partial verdict has been reached, but the jury still needs to deliberate. Joining us now, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, Neama Rahmani. It's great to see you again. Jurors said they couldn't reach a unanimous decision on racketeering, as you know. While we do not know at this point what the jury has said, I'm curious, does the hung decision on that most serious charge suggest guilt or innocence, in your opinion?
Wow, what a difference a day makes.
Right.
Yesterday, we had a juror who said apparently that he wasn't going to deliberate, juror number 25. And a day and a half later, we have verdicts on 4 of the 5 counts. So let's go through it and read the tea leaves here a little bit. Certainly, it's possible that we're not guilty or guilty on all of those counts. I think not guilty is less likely because 2 of those 4 counts, counts 3 and 5, are prostitution. And there was plenty of evidence that Combs paid the sex workers. Really, the defense was that he thought he was paying porn stars and was making homemade pornos. Not a particularly good defense, in my opinion. I would be very surprised if the jurors were not guilty on prostitution. And frankly, if they're not guilty on prostitution, the least serious charge, they're probably not guilty across the board. So then there's the possibility that they're guilty on prostitution, as well as counts 2, sex trafficking of Cassie Ventura, and count 4, sex trafficking of Jane. That's possible. But if they're already guilty of sex trafficking, they're well on their way to racketeering. And this is why. Racketeering has 3 primary elements. The first is the criminal enterprise. The second is an unlawful agreement. And the third is the pattern of racketeering activity. And sometimes those are called RICO predicate acts, and that can be sex trafficking, but it can also be drug trafficking or prostitution or extortion. We heard testimony that Cassie's mom paid $20,000. Arson, Kid Cudi's car being lit on fire, or bribery, the $100,000 payment for that hotel surveillance video. So if the jurors are already decided to be guilty on sex trafficking, they're well on their way to racketeering. So what might they be hung up on?
It is so interesting to hear you make what you perceive to be those connections, because it's not always immediately clear which way the jury is going. And also, as you know, just in hearing it and watching this trial, that count 1 has been confusing, I understand, for even lawyers. Is this hung decision an indication of what's to come?
Not necessarily. A lot can change from day to day. And, you know, we're coming up on a 3-day weekend, a holiday weekend, and never underestimate that, motivation to get 12 strangers to come to a decision. They do not want to come back next week, July 7th. So they're going to have all day tomorrow and probably all day Thursday to reach a verdict on that remaining count. And they haven't even received an Allen charge yet. That is what the judge will do. It's named after a famous Supreme Court case that I'll tell them to continue deliberating, to keep an open mind, don't take an entrenched position, listen to their colleagues in that jury deliberation room. So the judge hasn't even done that yet. And the fact that we're already this far along, less than 2 days of jury deliberation, leads me to believe that we're probably going to get a verdict tomorrow, Thursday at the latest. For jurors to hold out and deadlock, it's certainly possible. But the fact that we've already had a consensus and received at least some indication that they've reached a verdict on those 4 leads me to believe that they'll probably come around relatively soon, maybe as early as tomorrow.
Yeah, as you mentioned, deliberations continue tomorrow on that count 1, so we could have answers sooner rather than later. Neama Rahmani, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the National News Desk.
Of course. Thank you for having me, as always. Talk soon.